Hello and welcome to Unstress. I'm Dr. Ron Ehrlich. Movement. Look, it's such an important part of keeping healthy throughout each and every day. Now, I want to share with you a short calculation of how much time we have to move or be still in a week in all our lives. So stay with me on this one. You may need a pen and paper. Now, there are 168 hours in a week. Say you spend 8 hours a night sleeping, and incidentally, I don't believe that's optional. It's a biological necessity. It's your life support system, but we've talked about sleep elsewhere. So that's 56 hours of sleep a week, but you're not moving, so that leaves 112 hours waking hours. Now, if you think going to the gym for 3 or 4 times or hours per week, doing a repetitive activity is going to do it for you, I think you need to think again. And many of us are spending a lot of time sitting. My guest today is one of Australia's, if not the world's, leading personal trainers, Aaron Mckenzie. Now, like many of us that face challenges, Aaron's passion sprang from a desire to overcome his own health issues and a constant drive to learn more that allowed him to achieve optimal performance. He runs his gym in Sydney and has trained elite athletes as well as guiding people like me and hopefully you. Now, I've always enjoyed exercise, but I've known Aaron for almost 10 years and he's inspired me. I mentioned that in my book and I wanted to share him with you today. He's been working as a personal trainer for almost 20 years, throughout that time developing a holistic model for movement and health, integrating sustainable lifestyle changes coupled with practical, functional, that means everyday movements in his programs. The thing I've always found so inspiring about Aaron is the way he combines breathing, nutrition and movement into his functional movement programs. And that is not just the movement of muscles, but all the tissues of the body: cardio, respiratory, digestive, lymphatics. Now, here's some insights that Aaron shares, and I thought I'd share with you. He says gym equipment's overrated. People spend too much time travelling to gyms, and when they get there, they perform inefficient training. People spend too much money on unused gym memberships. I think we can all relate to that. Motivational trainers, training trends, as opposed to movement coaches, not to mention unused personal gym equipment. People need to learn how to feel and move their body, not sit on machines. Coaching needs to be focused on improving the individual's movement capacity, not motivating people into lifting too heavy, too fast, or getting too fatigued. Now, we'll also talk about daily activity and embracing 3 key movements. That's the way to go, and we'll try to build them into a daily routine with slow, controlled, diaphragmatic abdominal breathing. Now, breathing is one of those pillars. The 5 pillars: sleep, breathe, movement, nourish, and thought. The thing I love about Aaron's approach, he's always learning and he's constantly evolving and looking for a balance. And I love this term that Aaron uses to describe movement: nurture the body. Wow, who would have thought? I'm actually doing more of my own workouts now at home myself, so I started his online progression program, which we'll also talk about. I hope you enjoy this conversation I had with Aaron Mckenzie. Welcome to the show, Aaron.
Hey Ron, how are you?
Good. Now, Aaron, exercise, I've said in my book, you are a great source of inspiration for me. You have been for many, many years, and I wanted to share a lot of that with my listeners. So people, when they think about exercise, they think about gyms, they think about membership, they think about machines and rows of machines. That's not how you're working. Can you share with us what the philosophy is behind your movement, your exercise?
Well, definitely it's one that utilizes the body. The focus is on the individual, not a fancy environment, and it's just simplicity. So we want to, kind of provide a service that allows people to learn about their own body, learn how they can move, and just enjoy that process of, getting more out of life by having a healthier, fitter, stronger body. And that doesn't require expensive equipment, doesn't require huge amounts of time. It's just a commitment to gradual development and just making consistent changes over time, and then the body will adapt.
I heard you use the term nurturing.
Yes.
Which was the first time I'd heard you use in a gym space. Go on, tell us about nurturing the body rather than flogging yourself.
Yeah, well, I think that's the shift that people are looking for. I really like that as a term when I'm teaching, because people come in with this expectation to get a result. They've got to really force their body to change, and it has to be this hard and, kind of extreme process. Yeah, no pain, no gain. But really the body will adapt. And if you just take your time and you nurture the body into change, that's a far more enjoyable process. And you really feel good all the time. My goal is to feel good in my body every day. I've trained my body to extreme levels in the past, and forced it to change, and just not enjoyed, the days after. Yeah. And that happens to a lot of people, and that happens in a lot of gyms, and just, we do have a rise in the whole kind of CrossFit phenomenon, which has been great, getting people moving, and it's community-based fitness, and it's kind of stopped the larger gyms kind of being the dominant force, which has been awesome. But I think the intensity is what people are looking to manage better. I definitely still train hard, but it's not always hard. I just listen to my body, and I teach people to kind of self-assess. What does your body need today? And we go through a kind of a warm-up process like you did the other day, which is really cool, and learn that and teach that, so that way people can work out, well, what's right for me to do today? What do I need to do today? And regardless of what that is, whether you're feeling really good or you're feeling a bit run down, the workout should still nurture you into that next development, as opposed to force you or hurt you. And everyone's like, you need this excess stress to induce a response and have adaptation, but not to the extremes that people are doing it. Yeah.
Now, you deal with elite athletes.
Yes.
And you deal with, I say this, ordinary people like me. And
no way you were ordinary.
Anyway. The point being, there's a real range of people there. Definitely. And you've kind of gone through your own journey. You mentioned that you've trained hard. I mean, you've been doing this for a while. Tell us a bit about your journey through this, to this point.
Yeah, to this point. So I started with skateboarding, which I really enjoyed as a movement and as a form of expression. And then I went through a transition in my later teen years where it didn't, I thought this was, childish, whatever. And I went on to martial arts, which I thought was, was great. I just loved that, and got into the gym, and it really kind of helped me set direction in my life. And it, I guess, gave me a sense of purpose. I loved sharing what I was learning, and loved the martial arts environment of this kind of community, people together, connecting, and other people trying to develop themselves alongside each other. Then I went into just being a personal trainer and continue with martial arts with capoeira, which is very much a community-based kind of approach to movement. And then
that's the Brazilian.
Yeah, the Brazilian.
What is it called again?
Capoeira.
Capoeira.
So it's a mixture of acrobatics and dance and music and song. It's a very kind of complete art form. I never really liked fighting or anything like that, but I love the self-expression. And fortunately now this is kind of like the next kind of up and coming thing, which is great. Like worldwide people kind of doing this movement flow stuff, which is what I've been doing for quite a long time. And then the gymnastic strength stuff is really big now as well, which is kind of using body weight, the calisthenics approach. So the merging of those is great. Plus we have all the yoga, Pilates, the core conditioning stuff. And I've just been driven by all of that, and I just love integrating. So my approach has always kind of been an integration of what I've done in my life, and a continually evolving approach. Yeah.
Because in your sessions, there are kind of three phases to a session.
Yes.
You tell us, and that's how, when I do workout at home, I've been inspired by that. Run us through those three parts.
So you have the three basic parts. So you're working with your mobility. So there's this self-assessment process. So we use a massage ball, we use a foam roller, and then just go through movements, but in a dynamic stretch, if you will. So it's not like static stretching, but just going through and just feeling your whole body and where's it at today. Then we go into this kind of warm-up process where we go through into main whole body movements. So pulling, pushing, and leg movements. And there's all different diverse movements that the body does. So we use those in a kind of structured format so that a group can move through it. and then go into core conditioning, your stability work, which is to give you that postural endurance so you can align the body so you can feel good. Whenever you say posture, everyone's
sitting up straight.
And that kind of balances the body to make sure that it's, because if you just go in and just do the hard movements and the big movements, then sometimes these little imbalances slip away. So it's just trying to feel the body, where is it at, move it through these big ranges of motion and strengthen it through these full ranges of motion, using the arms, using the legs, pulling and pushing, and then go through and do this stability work to keep everything aligned and structured. Because
underlying it all is this idea of doing movements in functional. That's what we're doing every day.
To live better.
Yeah. So incorporating that kind of, well, you said go on the...
Pull, push, legs.
Pull, push and legs.
Yeah.
But there's also that kind of flexion and extension.
Yeah, the balancing component of it.
The balancing.
So, if you pull one way, you push the opposite way. And you do a mixture of different pulling and pushing movements in different directions so the body's stimulated into balance.
Yeah.
And we talked about it the other day was where, the classic is if someone goes in the gym, does bench press, does a bicep curl, goes onto the ground, does some crunches and then does a plank. And it's all closing them into the very position that we're trying to pull people out of. Because most people are sitting for long periods and hunching over, and their respiration is hindered because of that position. So they're kind of in this closed position. So we do a lot of pulling movements to really open people up. We still do the pushing and the flexion movements where we get all that extension, and the hanging is a big part. Like I just tell people, if there's one thing you can do every day, hang every day to traction out your spine and reverse the effects of being on the phone and in front of a screen and driving in the car. And then just deep squat to get those hips nice and mobile.
Yeah.
And they're two really basic things, plus a bit of walking,
That hanging, when we're talking about hanging, we're talking about literally on a bar with your arms
locked
holding
out.
onto the bar and just letting the weight of your body hang.
Pull you down. And you can start with your feet on the ground and doing that. But I find it, it's hugely therapeutic for people. And it's balancing out the compressive forces of gravity that we're under that are pushing us down. Plus it's, the inner ape that's within us to brachiate and swing off things. Those genes are just left suppressed if we don't activate them.
Yeah.
So when you grip onto something and just traction out your shoulders, it's getting that activation of those genes so that the body is healthier. And it also, counterbalances that compressive force.
Now, I think the first time I worked out with you was probably almost 10 years ago.
Yeah, at least.
And you introduced me to that resting squat.
Yes.
And tell us why that's so good. I mean, it's so simple, but it's so good.
Well, if you look at the hips, they've evolved around that position. The structure of them is that you can get your bottom to the ground for, if you think about it for a second, it's pretty obvious, when we have a bowel movement, we've got to evacuate the bowel, and it's far better to be closer to the ground than high off.
We've been doing it for millions of years like that.
Definitely.
I mean, you were the guy not only introduced me to the resting squat, but also squatty potty. But I mean, honestly, I've included that as a major postural stress.
It is. For the bowel, it's very important for you. You've got the ascending colon on the left, descending colon on the right, and unless you're getting right down there, you're not compressing that area of your body to allow for that full evacuation of the bowel.
Yeah.
And the decompressing of the lower back by being in that position is awesome as well. Plus, it just allows you to maintain hip flexibility, ankle, knee flexibility.
What about people with hip and... I mean, I'm fortunate, I think.
You started and got into it.
I can get down to that, but I notice, young guys in the group can't because they've got tightness in their hips or their hamstrings.
Quads, their calves, their hips, their glutes, their lower back.
So should they be hanging on to something?
Yeah, definitely. You've got to gradually progress into it. So holding on to something so that you can decompress or deload the body a little bit so that there's less force going in there, and then gradually increase that is a great way to start. And that's like people when they're starting with the hang, they kind of do a bit of both. So you're getting that tractioning from a low bar hang or just hanging off like a balustrade or something that's kind of hip height.
Yeah.
And then tractioning into that deep squat. It feels really good, but it's a great way to kind of gradually build that amount of force going in there.
Now, I just did, as I say, having worked out with you and loved that, the whole environment of the gym, but I've found my time now at home. And so just recently I did this fabulous program that you've devised called Progression, which I got so much out of. Tell us about that,
Yeah.
the idea of that.
Well, that came about obviously from my training history and then working with Anthony Minicello. So he's obviously got a fairly decent connection through the media because of his profile.
Yeah. Well, Anthony, for those that not everybody is a rugby league fan, so Anthony, tell us what he...
Well, he's probably one of Australia's best football players. And, he came back from a severe spinal injury. He had multiple disc bulges, 2 surgeries, We started working together, it was about 8-9 years ago, probably just after I met you, and he made an amazing comeback.
He did.
Phenomenal comeback. And
I think he was then ended up playing some of his best football.
Oh, totally. And then, and he was written off, everything. Everyone thought, he's finished. And to make a comeback like that was just phenomenal to see. And we always kind of, talked about whenever he finished, we try and get this message out to everyone because it's so important. So we've developed this program to make it user-friendly, to help trainers develop in this way. So people that are already personal trainers, group instructors, group fitness instructors, integrated into what they're doing, but then also a general populations program of it's more simplified and just gradual in the sense that you can start off doing minimal and then if you've got more time, use it. But the whole purpose of it is to really allow people to have that sense of development and realize that you can change. And he's a true inspiration in a sense that, he couldn't do up his own shoelaces. An elite level athlete that's reduced to that. His injury is that severe that, he was really written off. But we just went through a process of, just building his body up slowly. And then over the course of 6 months, he was making a full comeback. And then, it took longer than that to really recover. But in 6 months, he was amazed at how strong he'd become. And then that just kept developing further and further. And it was just an example of what we all can do. It doesn't matter where you're starting. There's always somewhere to go. And we always felt that this is such an important message for people because people kind of, they try to exercise. They go out and like we talked about, they go a bit too hard. And then they think, it's not for them. And that nurturing part, I guess, comes out of that. Is that, you've got to listen to your body, work with your body, give it what it needs, and then allow it to develop. Don't force it. Listen to it. And if you just make gradual progression, it can do amazing things.
The other thing I really got out of it, because now doing a lot of the workouts at home and using some of a lot of the exercises that you've shown me over the years, it reminded me of the importance of getting my repetitions, not locking into, like I thought, wow, I'm doing 20 or 30 push-ups, fantastic. And you're going, hang on, don't do that all the time.
Mix it up.
Mix it up. So this mixing up is really important.
Yeah, definitely. Well, the classic is people go to the gym, they do 3 sets of 10, or you guys that are trying to get stronger, they'll do 5 sets of 5. So you're doing 5 repetitions of a movement, having a bit of a rest and doing that 5 times through. The limiting factor of that is that you're molding your body because you've got to think about everything that you do. You're constantly adapting your body to the environment that you put yourself in. And if you just do that, you'll mold around that, just like you can sit in a chair all day and mold around that. And you become weak outside of that. So we encourage a diverse range of reps. So you do low reps for heavier lifting and then do really light stuff, which is very therapeutic and increases blood flow, increases the aerobic capacity of the muscle, and then everything in between to build some tissue, to build some muscle mass, as well as give it more endurance. So if you get a broad spectrum of conditioning on the body and use a mixture of different reps and loading parameters, the body's going to be more balanced. So our program really try and teaches that in a simplistic way. So we just kind of move reps by 3 every day. So as an example, we'll do 15 reps on a Monday, 12 on a Tuesday, 9 on a Wednesday, 6 on a Thursday.
There's slightly different
variation, Or we change movements every day through the course of a week. It's like a weekly checklist. But then when you come around next week, you're going to do the same movement, but with different loading parameters. So you can learn how to adjust your body position. And it's all a beautiful process just to understand how you can make things harder or easier and get the benefits of getting all different fibers through the body facilitated. And it gives you a much better healthy response for life. So if you go and play any particular sport, it's so diverse because the whole concept of sport is to try and trick the other person and compete with them. But it's an unpredictable environment. So when if I took Anthony as an example and I'm trying to take him back in when he was healing, back into this very strenuous, unpredictable environment. So you've got to condition him for that. So you have to do this variety of different movements and variety of different loading parameters to stimulate the body into being into more balance. It sounds very complex when I'm talking about it now, but the thing is diversity.
Yeah,
not just repeating the same thing.
I thought it was really interesting too, going back to this 3 stages of your workout, which is getting mobility first.
Yes.
And you actually focus on this rather unusual, getting the wrists in different positions.
Yeah.
So when we're doing our stretches, the wrists actually get warmed up in different positions. And you drew the analogy, hey, if you ever fell and you had to put your hand out to take the load, having that inbuilt into your daily routine prepares you for that kind of trauma.
Yeah, because you need
movement.
You need these 3-dimensional pressures, from toe tip all the way through to your fingertips, from the cranium, your skull, down to your sacrum, your coccyx. You've got to have this strength and this diverse range of pressures going in there, because otherwise you just mold around a limited amount of pressures. So anything outside of that becomes fragile. So the whole program needs to be anti-fragile.
Right.
For
build
life.
resilience.
Yeah, build resilience, just like you do in all other areas of life, emotionally, financially, so that way you've always got a bit of a reserve so you can handle the stress. Because life is unpredictable. You can make it quite, protected and simple, but reality is you want to enjoy it. You don't want to just, put yourself in a cardboard box and a padded box and, be too scared to do anything. You want to enjoy it, put yourself out there, play different things, go rock climbing, dance, pick your grandkids up, throw them around, run around, do all these different things. And if your body's healthy and you've got a program in place that conditions you for that, you're going to enjoy it.
Yeah.
It'll feel good.
Well, look, the other thing I always loved about the gym was that, apart from the fact that you taught me how to go to the toilet properly, at that stage in my life it was a real eye-opener, and it has made a big difference, was also that nutrition was such an important part of that. And, nutritional stresses we're faced with all the time.
Totally.
But when we come to, and that's a big part of the rehabilitation, I know.
Yeah, big time.
Yeah.
Is to bring that into your life. And the community fitness movement has this huge opportunity.
Yeah.
And I've always said personal trainers, that they've got a massive opportunity to branch out into this health coaching field.
Well, life coaching.
Life coaching, in all areas of your life. And whether you're a group fitness instructor or whether you're a personal trainer, the market is growing, literally. Obesity is huge. It's getting bigger and bigger every year. So people are crying out for help. And having this community fitness environment is a perfect opportunity to teach people by example and to create a space where people can get this coaching. So when people come to the gym space that I've created, they're learning about life. They're learning, how can I prepare good food? What's a good kind of strategy for shopping? What are good recipes? Learning about sleep-wake cycles, all the things that you talk about in your book are part of what we do and people need coaching through that. And it's a process, you can't just do it all straight away. You've got to layer in the changes. So having this community environment allows people to come back and when all the research points to it, these small groups really help create change. You've got a support network. You've got an environment that you feel safe. You've got an environment and you've got fellow people that are sharing the journey with you. And it's a beautiful thing to do in your life, and you can layer it in. And fortunately for me, been doing this for quite a long time. I've got clients like yourself that I've had for a long time that, it's just great to watch the evolution in their life. It's such a gift.
Now, one thing that people often do associate with doing exercise is hydration.
Yeah.
And we were talking about that the other day, and we both read this great book called The Salt Fix.
Oh, awesome.
And you really stressed the importance of this.
Especially with movement, because movement is a large stressor. And you, if you read The Salt Fix, great book.
We'll have links to that.
It explains the relationship with, depleting salt, the adrenal stress, But when you're sweating, when you're training, you're losing, obviously electrolytes, which is sodium in the blood. And if you're not replacing that, you're in trouble, And if you just drink water without the minerals in it, then you're further diluting the body and losing, you're going to stress the body more. So a lot of people drink water and then wonder why they urinate or they, have water at night and then they've got to get up and go to the toilets because they don't have enough of the salt there. We have in the gym, we have a mortar and pestle there, and we have, Celtic sea salt. So if people like it a bit smooth, they can crush it. But we encourage people to have it before and after workouts. and salt their food, because of, if you read the book, it goes through all the research and shows you that it's really unfounded.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because the two things that seem so central to basic biochemistry, cholesterol, which is part of every cell in our body, is important for every hormone, and salt, which is so basic to our existence, has been demonised.
Oh, totally.
And I think there's a problem there.
There is a big problem. And it's in need of this kind of grassroots approach. That's why the kind of community fitness-based approach is great, because I get people coming in, they're having the salt before and after. A week later, they're telling me, I don't get cramps anymore. I actually feel like my thirst is being quenched when I drink water now. I don't go from a squatting position or a lying position and stand up and feel a bit lightheaded anymore.
Yeah, the low blood pressure.
They're all symptoms of low sodium. I spent, the better part of my life training quite hard. And it's really in the last 5 years I've really brought that training intensity down. But, I think back, I've always put a bit of salt in my water and understood the importance of it. But I spent all that time salt depleted, without a doubt, and suffering,
It's not just those sodium, is it? Because, Celtic... We're not talking about Saxa table salt with sodium and chloride. We're talking about a salt that has 60 or 70 different trace elements, trace minerals, and they're really important for that.
That's a big point of difference.
What about people who do push themselves? I see people push themselves hard. I see people running, and I know people run for lots of reasons.
Oh, definitely.
And meditate. It's kind of a form of meditation.
It is stress relief, definitely.
What should they be doing, for the people that are really pushing hard? We're talking about us, ordinary people, getting out and moving and not overdoing it and all of that. But there are people who genuinely enjoy pushing themselves hard. What would you say to those people?
I'm one of those people. I've been one of those people. I'm just recovering from it. But I think it's just learning to listen to your body is the biggest thing. If it's taking you longer and longer to warm up, there's something going on there. And if you only feel good once you've warmed up, like I was guilty of just, training for long periods of time, training a couple of times a day, and you feel great when you're training because you're getting that natural release of the endorphins, endogenous morphine, and it feels awesome. But you start to notice little niggles and things like that. And I'm all for movement. I'm never going to stop moving. I love it. It's my life. I love teaching it. I move all day. But I've really looked at the intensity, and you've got to look at what's your real motivation. What are you trying to get out of it? And like you said, it's a great stress relief. For me, it's my best form of meditation, to just be at one with my body and training and moving my body. But you've got to try and work out, what's right for me? What's going to give me the health that I'm after, as well as the fitness and the movement capacity? And so some basic things I tell people, if you enjoy running, mix it up. Get into a gym where they've got a nice program where they're doing lots of different movements, or get on progression.io.
Yes, we'll have the links to that.
Yeah, and start a program like that. So you're getting some different motions going, because your body will just mold around that running stride. And if it's, if you're exhausted, fatigued, then it's not going to get prettier. As people fatigue, and you can see people running long distances and their stride, starts to look more compressed and they look heavier, and they're kind of beating up the joints. Because they can't recover from it fast enough. So work on your flexibility, improve your stride, get better technique, and try and, feel fresh when you're doing it, and don't totally exhaust yourself. If you're doing, any type of endurance exercise, if your goal is to improve cardiovascular fitness, put a heart rate monitor on, and, don't go over 140, it's around 180 minus your age. You don't want to go past that, because if you're going past that, you're stimulating your body to too higher intensity. So you bring that intensity right down. And if you've got an example like Centennial Park, and you run around that and you try and keep that heart rate at a certain level. And then every time, if you're getting fitter and you keep it at the same level, but you're getting faster with the same heart rate, you're actually fitter. But if you have to turn up and force yourself to run around faster, you're just pushing your body harder. So you've turned up with a bit more mental energy that day, but you haven't actually gotten any fitter. So make it measurable if you enjoy cardiovascular fitness. Use a heart rate monitor to control it, but also focus on improving like we talked about, big part of the workshop was improving your respiratory mechanics, because that will improve your fitness and your health so much more than just trying to force the movement. So I encourage all the foam rolling, and in our program we go through it, the massage ball and foam rolling, to really open up the rib cage and mobilize the rib cage so you can take a deeper breath. So if you're listening to this in the car or wherever, you breathe deep into the bottom of your lungs and feel that belly expand, your rib cage expand, and then you exhale and just let it come out. And then you can force that exhalation a little bit to squeeze that stale air out before you take another breath, and then breathe in. So that allows for you to feel more relaxed, more calm, but also you're using different pockets. So if you're just breathing shallow in your neck, but you're trying to train harder, by running or cycling or whatever, you're not actually going to improve the health of your body and the tissues. You're just going to force the body to work harder in a pattern that may not be so good for you. So taking that approach to running, I think it can become very healthy. I've got some great clients that are great long distance runners, and some of them that are sprinters and stuff like that. So I just encourage them to get some diversity in their program. And if they're long distance runners, do a mixture of sprinting and long distance, and then do long distance at a really low intensity and try and improve your cardiovascular fitness in a gentler way rather than forcing it. And then just just getting onto fat for fuel rather than, kind of depleting the body of glycogen and then forcing it back in. And that's been a big shift. Like I had the cafe before with the gym, trying to get people onto this nutrition path. But now I'm really kind of encouraging, eating less, having 2 good meals a day, and not being so stressed about this post-workout meal, and really trying to minimize the amount of carbohydrates. I think when you're training too hard and too frequently, you crave more carbs because you're depleting glycogen all the time. So I still have a little bit of carbs, but predominantly, what I'm eating is fat, and fueled by that. And that transition can happen when you train at a lower intensity. When you train at too higher intensity, it's very hard to make that shift into fat for fuel as a clean fuel source.
Yeah. So this whole idea that's been almost ingrained in these athletes of carb loading before a long event.
Yeah. Well, for an event, it may be different. If you're competing, you might use that as a method to compete with. But in terms of actually just training, I train fasted. I've trained fasted for the last 2 years. I don't eat until after I've trained in the day. And sometimes I'll train in the middle of the day, sometimes the morning, depends when I've got a nice gap. And then I don't eat until about 1 to 3 p.m.
Okay, so you'll fast going. You won't eat before you exercise.
No.
And is there a better time to exercise?
The time
of day?
Yeah. Obviously, you're going to feel a bit stronger, not very early, but, kind of mid-morning. And then there's an afternoon sweet spot as well that I know in myself and working with athletes that's where I'm stronger. But like we've talked about before, it's got to be practical. And I encourage people, first thing is the best. I find that my clients over the years that have trained first thing are the ones that stick it out for the long run. Yeah. When you pay yourself first with some movement, and it doesn't need to be intense, 10 minutes in the morning first thing. And if you enjoy breakfast, have that after. I don't have breakfast. I break my fast at 1 to 3 p.m., depending on a day. But, get that movement done first. And, it doesn't have to be too intense. Just move your body, pay yourself first.
I found the biggest breakthrough for me was going to bed earlier.
Yes.
So that I could wake up earlier, because going to the gym early in the morning worked really well.
Thanks for that bird that got you
That's
up.
right.
Yeah?
That's right.
Book, that was awesome.
That's right. So that was, when I used to go to bed at 12, or, because I used to think, I do all my best work at night.
Yes.
Once the kids are asleep, I do all
you're
my
more creative.
Oh, man, that was a big breakthrough for me, because I stopped doing that, and suddenly exercise came easier, and from exercise a whole lot of other stuff came easier.
Yes.
It was a real that sleep business.
Well, I find for me, my biggest thing is you turn the screens off by 9 p.m.
Yeah,
no screens after 9 p.m. And then I wind down, chill out a bit, and I'm up at 5:30 every day. So if I'm not in bed by 9:30, I'm not going to feel good, and I'm not giving my best the next morning to the clients that are coming to see me to learn from me, and I enjoy my day the next day. Yeah. And unlike you, I love study, I love reading, I love learning to be able to do what I enjoy and do it better. So it is easy to fall into that trap to just get on that screen and research, because it's unlimited.
You can get lost
at our fingertips now, and just get caught up. And it's 12 o'clock and I've got to get up the next day at 5:30. And yes, I've improved my knowledge of the area, but then I've made tomorrow harder.
Yeah.
So shifting that, I now study, mostly with Audible and stuff like that, and then also just through the day. And I try and really chill out at night so I can enjoy the morning.
Yeah. Now, listen, before we finish, I always like to ask a guest, what do you think the biggest challenge, and you may have identified one there already, but what do you think the biggest challenge is for people in our modern world on this health journey that we're all on through life? What do you think?
Keeping it simple. Like you said, you've just got to get to bed on time, eat whole fresh food, do a bit of movement, and just, love the people around you that are important to you, and just stick to that. Don't make it complicated. I think our big thing is all the carrots, all the things that people gravitate towards that cost them more money, cost them more time, like we're, talking about with expensive gym memberships where they're full of machines, or where they're filling up their garage with all fitness equipment, or whether they're buying all this latest stuff in their quest to get lean. And it's all the distractions. Our biggest challenge is, put that bloody phone down, get off that screen, you get off Instagram. I love it as a learning tool, but, people scrolling there, that's our challenge. And I think we're going to look back and think of mobile phones in particular as, like cigarettes very shortly. I think that it's going to come out how bad these things are for us. And we're going to think, we're giving our kids, I know it's pretty extreme, but it's like giving a kid a cigarette almost. I think they're important functional tools. I use my phone every day, don't get me wrong. I use the screen, but I think we're just getting too connected to it. We're too dependent on it for fulfillment and for joy and all of that. And I think the more we put it down, I know for myself, the more I connect with my son, my wife, my clients, and just have those really meaningful connections, I think that's where the gold is.
Great. Aaron, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
We'll have links to Aaron's progression program on our webpage. It's all about developing yourself and learning how to work with your body in the moment. What do you need today? The tagline for the progression program fits in beautifully with my 5 pillars. Move your body every day. That creates balance and improves your movement capacity, incorporating hormonal, muscular, skeletal, lymphatic and respiratory balance. I love that. Nourish, good food, hydration, clean environment, breathing, and of course thoughts are things, so make them work for you. And the last factor that he incorporates in this progression program is recover. And he talks about the importance of sleep. Now, I started the progression program a few weeks ago and I got a lot out of it. It reminded me to mix it up. It reminded me about keeping good form. It reminded me not to repeat the same exercise, do the same repetitions with the same patterns. Approach my workouts, get this, more holistically. Who would have thought? Listen to my body. And of course, I love that term, nurture. We'll have links to Aaron's program on our webpage. And also, listen, don't forget, get onto our Facebook page or drop me a line. I love and I learn from your feedback, and guess what? It shows you care. So until next week, this is Dr. Ron Ehrlich. Be well. This podcast provides general information and discussion about medicine, health, and related subjects. The content is not intended and should not be construed as medical advice or as a substitute for care by a qualified medical practitioner. If you or any other person has a medical concern, he or she should consult with an appropriately qualified medical practitioner. Guests who speak in this podcast express